Let's now have a look at some multiple transformations where we need to do more than one thing. This one has two transformations in it. We've got a negative in front of e to the power of x, which means that we are flipping the graph upside down. So a handy way to think this through is to a tiny, tiny sketch. That's not your proper sketch, just a tiny one. Think what your usual shape would be, and then think what will happen when I flip that upside down. I'll get something sort of like this. Then the other thing that's happened is we've lifted it up 5. So instead of having its asymptote on the x-axis, it's going to be up at 5. So that's the first thing to draw. We can draw in an asymptote and label it at 5. Then we can draw in our general shape. Now, for the general shape, you might be thinking, well, I'm not quite sure where it crosses the x and the y axis. I'm going to need to find those points anyway, so it sort of makes sense to find them first up so that you can get your graph looking roughly to scale. So if we let x equal 0 first, then y will equal, we just sub 0 in here, and anything to the power of 0 is 1. So we'll have negative 1 plus 5, we'll have 4. Okay? Now this makes sense because our original known graph had a y-intercept of 1, and when we flipped it upside down, that would be minus 1, and then when we lifted it up 5, it will end up at 4. So you could have thought that through just with your transformations, but this little bit of working just helps you keep things straight in your mind, and you know that we're going through the point 4 here. So we can probably go ahead now and just find our x-intercept by letting y equal 0. This one will have a little bit more work involved. We need to rewrite the equation with 0 for y. Now here we can add e to the power of x to both sides. And now we need to rewrite this as log. So remember we're saying e to the power of x is 5, e to the power of x is 5. So x is equal to the log of 5 with a base of e. Now thinking through what that number is, e is around 2.7, so 2.7 to the power of something being 5, we can get our scale and just put it roughly in around about here and just label it log E5, and now we know the basic shape. It comes up towards the asymptote and then it drops away sharply. And we have our graph, which also needs to be labelled y equals negative e to the power of x plus 5. Another example with two transformations. Here we have y equals e to the power of negative x minus 2. Now this negative on the x here means that we're going to reflect our usual curve around the x-axis. So instead of having this basic shape, it's going to look something more like this. Then we're going to drop it down 2. So instead of sitting here, it's going to come down. So a little rough sketch like that before you start your bigger one really helps. Now we're dropping it down 2. So the first thing I'm going to draw is my asymptote sitting down here at minus 2. Now I know the basic shape, and I can see it's going to have an x and a y intercept here. So to make sure I get it sort of roughly in the right place, I'm going to need to label those points anyway. I may as well find them first. So let x equal 0, y will equal, just sub 0 in here, e to the power of 0 is 1, 1 minus 2 is negative 1. So I have my intercept here. Now, you can work that out algebraically, or you could have thought it through by realising that normally we have our known point of 1, and if we've dropped the whole graph down 2 units, it's going to have come down 2 units. Okay, so that's fairly logical. Now to find our x-intercept, let y equal 0. This is the one that's a little bit trickier. Sub in a 0 for the y. Rewrite the rest of your equation. Now let's solve for x. So adding 2 to both sides brings the 2 to the left-hand side. And now we can retell this as a log e to the power of minus x is equal to 2. Now, if negative x is equal to the log of 2, then x must be equal to negative the log of 2. Now at this point, it could be handy to grab your calculator and just see what sort of number that actually is. And I find that that's around about negative 0.7. So with my scale here, I know that I'm going to be around about here. It doesn't have to be exact, but if you know it's sort of close, it makes your drawing look a little better. Now I don't want to label it with a decimal. I want to label it negative log of 2 with a base of e. Now I've got my 2 points here, and I know the basic shape. It needs to come down close to this asymptote and then go up sharply. I've labelled at least 2 points, so it's got scale, it's got asymptote, and it's got its intercepts. So I'm finished, I just need to label the curve. And we're done.